Hello and welcome to the public TV of Armenia. India and Armenia celebrate the 30 years of the establishment of diplomatic relations. An international conference, New Impetus to Millennial Relations, ended on November 29, dedicated to the new perspectives and stimulation opportunities for the centuries-old relations between the two nations. I am today honored to host Mrs. Reena Pandey, Ambassador of India to Armenia from 2005 to 2009, and Sunjoy Joshi, Chairman of Observer Research Foundation, who participated and delivered speeches during the event in Yerevan. Madam Ambassador, Mr. Joshi, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
How would you assess the current situation of Armenia-India relations, and what are the main achievements and challenges?
I am very positive about the current situation between our two countries, and this conference, two-day conference, to mark 30 years of our relationship, gave us more insight, valuable insights as to how to take this forward. At the moment, why I said I was very positive is because over the last couple of years, trade has trebled. Indian tourists are coming. Business-to-business exchanges are taking place. Delegations have met, business delegations. And also, culturally, many things are happening. Our chess federations are very, very active. And you know the Armenian chess team came second this year in the Olympiad in Chennai. So there is a vibrancy in the relationship that I'm seeing today. And another pointer for me, because I'm coming back after 13 years, when I was here, there were about 650 to 750 medical students. Today, I'm told there are more than 2,800.
Oh.
In the hotel that I was staying, Ani Grand Hotel, every morning I saw more Indians. And there were 8 today from Tamil Nadu, not from Chennai, but from places like Madurai, Udmalpet, places like that. 8 of them speaking Tamil. I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "We are tourists."
Oh, very nice to hear.
So I was very delighted. I mean, I was that didn't happen before. So I think we are poised to a new level of relationship. In the last 13 months, we've had several exchanges at high level. Our foreign minister came, your foreign minister went, your defense minister went. And and there was also our secretary, the top bureaucrat who came for the 7th Intergovernmental Commission, or the 8th. So a lot has been happening, particularly in the last 3 years. So I'm very heartened.
Thank you. And Mr. Joshi, what do you think about that?
I would endorse exactly what Mrs. Pandey is saying. I think we are, in the last 30 years, what we've also been doing. Armenia became a nation, but before Armenia became a nation, before even India became a nation, the links between the people of Armenia and India, where Indians and Armenians, where we are civilizations which I would say melded into each other's societies. You had Armenian traders in India for a long time, and if you look at the history of Indian-Armenian relationships, Armenia's first constitution, the first printing press, was set up in Madras, then Madras.
Yeah.
The first newspaper, Armenian newspaper, also got printed
India.
from there.
Yeah.
And Armenians have been a part of ancient trade routes across India. They were responsible for the growth of trade and commerce. I would call Armenians the first globalists. They globalized this world long before the world discovered globalization. And today the Armenian diaspora is doing exactly that. We are, and as India also has a huge diaspora abroad, there are at least 30 million Indians living outside India. Now these are large numbers, and they contribute to the societies they are part of. They've always contributed, and they will continue to contribute. But they have all the time retained their identities. They retain their Armenianness, they retain the Indianness as strong civilizational cultures. Now that is one connection between us. And that is a connection which we are now rediscovering, I would say. And these bonds are getting stronger and stronger, precisely for the reason that today we find ourselves in a very, very different and difficult world. Our neighborhood is getting difficult. And that is what is bringing us more and more together. We are rediscovering those commonalities. We are rediscovering those old civilizational contacts.
Madam Ambassador, as you mentioned recently, we see the political, economic and military cooperation becoming more and more stronger. And what do you think, how could you explain this activeness becoming more and more active?
I think it's a realization which was always there. I mean, India has always thought of the Caucasus and Central Asia as very strategic, very important, very culturally linked, always. And in the last 20 years, I have seen India's attention. You know, it had first neighbors first, then it had the south, east, far east, and then, you know, go this way, westward, and come to this region, Central Asian Caucasus. And there was a natural leaning towards Armenia. And in the last 3-4 years, all the more it has been, I mean, we feel that we need always to nurture good friends. You need them more and more in this world. The pandemic also showed that how developing countries like us had to fend for ourselves mostly. So we need to, you know, have these linkages strengthened so that we can always cooperate. So that's why I feel this awareness is more and more now, and it is good. I think it's a very good development. I'm personally very happy.
Mr. Joshi?
I think the reason why we are reconnecting is because we are also discovering in the last, I would say in the last 3 to 5 years, that more and more this world, the power vacuums are increasing. You know, and nature abhors a vacuum. Something will have to step in. Countries like India and Armenia will have to re-engage themselves as centers of civilization, as centers of power, to be able to retain their uniqueness as countries. And that is where this bond between India and Armenia, why it is gaining traction in these last few years, is precisely because of the region. And we are going to be in a very difficult space, I think, for the next 5 to 10 years at least. What we are facing is not going to be resolved very easily. So in these next few years, I see these ties between us strengthen, go stronger, because there is an inherent need. You know, there is a commonality of interests. There's ultimately a commonality of purpose we have. As I said, you know, we are global civilizations. In a world which is deglobalizing, we will still remain the forces of globalization, because that is our civilization. That is what we've always represented. That is what we've always stood for. So in a world which is kind of, in a way, dissipating, disrupting, where institutions are collapsing, and the center is not holding together, when you have to battle things, the real big problems, whether you talk of climate change, whether you talk of SDGs, you know, whether you talk of space programs, anything else, we need commonality of purpose. We need to get together, talk together. We cannot be in a situation in a world where leaders don't talk to each other.
So what can we expect more precisely on the perspective of Armenia-India cooperation for the coming years, and how much reference was paid to the issue during the conference?
I think the whole conference focused on how to take this forward, you know, because not to lose this momentum, this happy momentum that is taking place, this awareness, re-awareness rather. We were always aware of each other, but it's stronger now. In fact, one of the key things which we spotted and which we know that both sides have to work very hard at is the awareness of each other's country, people, how they live, what they eat, what is their, you know, joys and habits. There I thought, and we all agree, that media plays a very important role in this. So there should be media exchanges, you know, and I see, like you make little clips of each other's country and keep airing it on television, it has such a big effect. I'm seeing many countries in the world putting their clips on Indian television, all the channels, and like come to Macedonia, come to Belarus, like that. So we should do that for each other. Another way, of course, is the connectivity problem, which was discussed, the overland and the air. I feel that if we had direct flights, the number of tourists on both sides would have trebled or quadrupled.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now we come through all kind of routes, and that there are those waiting hours in airports which are not really very pleasant, or a happy space to be in. Then, of course, exchange of high-level visits is taking place, so that will continue, hopefully. And then we talked of, making Armenia very attractive for our film producers, who are always looking for new exotic places. And I was happy to know that that is also starting. In India, every year, more than 2,000 films are produced, So any producer or director would always look for some cost-effective measures, like a production house which would cost them less, come to one place, have all the scenery they want. So Armenia could, offer some investment in a production house and have Indian films shot here. It's happening in Georgia. Then another is destination weddings. This is a very, very key element of Indian society today, that young couples want to marry outside with their friends and family. And last month I played a role in facilitating visas for 20 people from Bombay to come to Tbilisi to get married in Tbilisi. So why can't, you have such exotic and quaint locales, So that was something we discussed. Sport events. Now girls from India are going on bikes on tour. And they want to go not to the usual Europe or whatever, to countries like this, go on motorbikes. Men, of course, they like to go on bike. Then there is also this thing what we discussed today, spiritual tourism also. Your churches and are wonderful. They look like something out of the Bible, So, and a lot of Armenians are interested in Indian philosophy. Yoga plays a very big role. I mean, we even have a UN day for yoga. So, these were the things we were talking about, Apart from business, even in space we have cooperation. So, I think the avenues are many and varied. Agriculture has not even been touched. And we have an MOU.
No.
We have an MOU on skills development also. Now, India is paying a lot of emphasis on developing the skills of its youth. So here we could have some exchange, training, and what is it we are doing to upgrade our skills. So there's so many avenues, David, for us to work on, honestly.
Mr. Joshi, what is your perspective on it?
To add to what Mrs. Pandey just said, that technology, I would give a different perspective to it. The technology is changing the face of not just society, it is changing the interactions between societies and within societies. It is changing how knowledge is created. It is changing how information is exchanged. It is acting as an extremely disruptive force in many ways. And the disruptions are, they happen with such great rapidity that it is becoming a challenge for nations, societies, and governments to keep pace with them. So there are lots of learning experiences from large societies and small societies. It's a challenge across societies. How are we going to be able to ride this storm, this very disruptive storm, which is going to change completely the relationship of man and society and machines?
Yeah.
The growth of the IT disruption which is upon us.
Coming to the connections, in terms of connectivity and communication, how would you assess the projects such as North-South Corridor, and will India join the construction and operation in the roads passing through Armenia to the Black Sea region?
I'm sure that's a possibility. which they would look at. In fact, they were discussing today about Indian companies showing interest in construction of anything that could add to connectivity, you know. And I was told there are Indian companies expressing interest. But we have to take it off the table, no, and get it going.
Start implementation.
Yes. Now, even in we have the Chabahar port also, which we were suggesting, you know, to our Armenian side, the use of that. The INSTC road, which is such a wonderful concept, if it is completely fulfilled, you know. A wonderful way of shortening distances for goods to be transported. Then, of course, air connectivity we discussed, and I think both sides, civil aviation agencies are engaged in discussions. So hopefully something will come out of that.
Thank you. Now coming to the regions surrounding India. Pakistan is very known to support cross-border terrorism in the Indian federal territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and continues to occupy a part of it which is known as Pakistani occupied Kashmir. And Pakistan also applies hostile policy towards Armenia. How do you see Islamabad's role in the region, and do they pose threats or risk?
At the moment, I'm seeing there is still political turmoil in Pakistan. And for us, this is a ongoing problem, which we have, always been trying. Our Prime Minister, all our Prime Ministers, all our leaders have held to this ground that only through dialogue and diplomacy and no terrorism. Come to the table without terrorism. Then we are free to talk. So this kind of diplomatic approach we have held, we suggest this to any country that is engaged in conflict anywhere. And we take up this matter wherever possible to, try to get Pakistan to see that this is not the way to go on as neighbors with open, borders and, So we are trying our efforts. Our security agencies are always on the alert. Our police and all the, forces that are engaged in national security are always on the alert.
And what can you tell about the war in 2020 when there were many reports about Pakistan openly supporting Azerbaijan's aggression against Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh, and also there were some reports that some Pakistani mercenaries were being used in Nagorno-Karabakh. What do you think about it?
I think it's very unfortunate. I don't have the details of this, but I think it's very unfortunate that any country should interfere in another country's problems.
Coming to, again, the Indo-Pacific region, what do you think about the concept and vision of Indo-Pacific region, and what is India's position on it?
India's position is very clear. We are part of the Indo-Pacific vision, as we call it. We are very much focusing on a maritime strategy also, forming kind of partnerships with countries which share similar concerns, let me say. So India is very active and welcomes any country that would help in keeping the Indo-Pacific region safe and secure.
And I would like you both to answer this question. How would you assess India's cooperation with Iran and the development of cooperation in Armenia, Iran, India trilateral format?
I think it would be very welcome. And it would help in so many ways because it's a neighbor for you. It's and with Iran we have civilizational links. We have always taken a balanced kind of stand where Iran is concerned, and we share very friendly, cordial relations. So if three countries share a common goal for development, for kind of peace, I think it would be welcome.
Mr. Joshi?
See, the Caucasus have been an extremely important strategic region for India always. India may not in the past have had the heft, the economic clout, to able to participate and join in many of the projects, but as strategic concepts, they have always existed. Because Iran and the Caucasus, these are India's egress, access routes into a large swathe of Eurasia. So India, if it is to get out of the subcontinental trap, and Pakistan actually traps it within the subcontinent, has to develop these routes. So you asked about the North-South corridor, why it is important. It is important. It is strategically important. And in the last few years, you've seen that in spite of all pressure on India, whether of sanctions by the US on Iran, India maintained its stand that it is necessary for it to keep on investing, encouraging its companies, and it is also in US interests to make sure that this region remains connected by and through forces which are not revisionist. You asked about Pakistan. You asked about our other neighbors. Our problem is we have revisionists all around us, who want to revise borders, who want to revise territories. India is not interested in that kind of a game. We want peace, we want prosperity, we want economic prosperity for Pakistan too. The problem is Pakistan is in an economic trap, and caught in that trap, it is perhaps finding that playing these games, whether you mention Azerbaijan, whether it is cross-border terrorism, playing these games is one way of maintaining coherence within the society, which would otherwise break up, disrupt because of economic turmoil. So these are things which are happening around us, and that is why we need to be careful. We need to navigate this space very carefully, both Armenia and India, over the next few years.
Madam Ambassador, Mr. Joshi, thank you very much for your time and joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, for giving us this opportunity to give our views to the people of Armenia. Thank you.
This is Public TV of Armenia, and today I was honored to host Mrs. Reena Pandey, Ambassador of India to Armenia from 2005 to 2009, and Sunjoy Joshi, Chairman of Observer Research Foundation from India, who participated and delivered their speeches during the international conference dedicated to 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Armenia and India. Thank you for watching.